Good morning, all my wonderful people. It's so good to see each and every one of you out there in business law land. Today is Thursday, April 13th, 2023. Is it okay, my wonderful people, if I tape? Hello? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Very good. Very good. I'm going to go back. I know we did some of this already, but I'm going to go back, okay, to page 321. Third-party beneficiary. What's the 17-1? What's a third-party beneficiary? We learned that generally only the parties to a contract may sue on it, right? We also learned that, however, in some cases, a third person who is not a party to the contract may sue on the contract. What's our definition, my wonderful people, of third-party beneficiary? Third-party beneficiary. What's the definition? I'm actually in my office right now. Oh, there it is, 17-1A, CPA examination. When a contract is intended to benefit a third person, such a person is an intended third-party beneficiary. Third-party beneficiary, right? And may bring suit on the enforcement of the contract. Okay, wonderful people, name me two types of third-party beneficiaries. Let's go to the chat. Let you write it in there. Let's go to the chat. Two types of third-party beneficiary. And good morning also. Good morning right back. Good morning. Two types, my wonderful people, of third-party beneficiaries. Just go ahead and type in one, if you would. Type in one. Oh, that was okay. I'm gonna say good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And let me write. Okay, someone shout out one. Go ahead and shout out one type of third-party beneficiary. One type of third-party beneficiary. Give me one. Anybody? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you.
All right. Give me one. This is a review, guys. This is from Tuesday. It's a review. Oh, here we go. Oh, creditor beneficiary. The intended beneficiary is sometimes classified as a creditor beneficiary when the promisee's primary intent is to exchange, not to exchange. There's a lot going on in this office right now. There's a lot happening outside. So creditor beneficiary. The intended beneficiary is sometimes classified as a creditor beneficiary when the promisee's primary intent is to discharge a duty owed to the third party. Owed to the third party. What's the example we use for that? What's the example we use for that? Anybody? What's the example? Oh, remember when Max Giordano sold his business, same way laundry, to Harry Finn, right? He had 3 years of payments totaling, what, $14,500 owing to Davco Incorporated on a commercial Davco shirt drying and pressing machine purchased in 2006. Max is the what, my wonderful people? Max is the what? Max is the promisee, right? Max the promisee made a contract with Harry to sell the business for a stipulated sum. A provision in this contract selling the business called for Harry, the promisor, to make the Davco machine payments when due over the next 3 years. So he's promising to do what? To make those payments over the what? Over the next 3 years, right? Over the next 3 years. What happens if Harry fails to pay? Should Harry fail to make payment? We're on page 321, page 321, 17-1A, 321. Should Harry fail to make payments, Davco Incorporated, as an intended creditor beneficiary under the contract between Max and Harry, would have standing to sue Harry for breach of the payment provision in the contract. So here, Davco is an intended creditor beneficiary, okay? and then they could sue, okay, to make sure that Harry pays. What's another one? CPA examination. Oh, donee beneficiary. The second type of intended beneficiary is a donee beneficiary to whom the promisee's primary intent in contracting is to give a benefit. Here is to give a benefit. What's the example they give us? A life insurance contract is such an intended third-party beneficiary contract. An individual third-party beneficiary has a right to sue under a broad range of insurance policies. Again, this is review. Okay, we did this already, but we're reviewing. Okay. How do you determine intent? How do you determine intent? And what is the strong presumption? How do you determine intent? And what, my wonderful people, is the strong presumption? Oh, page 322. Necessity of intent. A third person does not have the status of an intended third-party beneficiary unless it is clear at the time the contract was formed that the parties intended to impose a direct obligation with respect to the third person. In determining whether there is an intent to benefit a third party, what do you look at? Anybody? What do you look at, my wonderful people? What do we have to look at?
Unjust enrichment.
Page 322. In determining whether there is intent to benefit a third party, the surrounding circumstances as well as the contract may be examined. So we look at the surrounding circumstances. They intended it, right? There's a strong presumption that the parties to a contract intend to benefit only what? Only what, my wonderful people? Only themselves, right? There's a strong presumption that they only want to benefit themselves and no one else, all right? Themselves and no one else. Let me see. You see this example here right now on page, the case summary on page 322. Page 322. It says that Admiral Pest Control had a standing contract with Lodging Enterprises to spray its motel every month to exterminate pests. Copeland, a guest in the motel, was bitten by a spider. She sued Admiral on the ground that she was a third-party beneficiary to the extermination contract. What's the issue? Can a motel guest, right, recover from the motel's extermination contract? That's our issue, okay? And what's the answer? Judgment against Copeland. Why? There was no intent manifested in the contract that guests of the motel were beneficiaries of the contract. The contract was made by the motel to protect itself. Wow. The guests were what? Incidental beneficiaries of that contract and therefore could not sue for breach. Okay, could not sue for its breach. Now, here's an example I use. Okay, let's say that we're going to have a party at the end of the semester, and one of the students is supposed to go to Stop and Shop to buy the cake, the soda, the candy, etc., right? And instead of going to Stop and Shop, they go to ShopRite. Can Stop and Shop sue? Yes or no? Let's go to the chat. Yes or no, my wonderful people? Let's go to the chat. So we're having a party in the semester, and you say, hey, go to Stop and Shop and get the soda, the ice cream, the cake, etc., etc. But instead of going to Stop and Shop, the person goes to ShopRite. Can Stop and Shop sue? And the answer is what? Yes or no? Okay. All right. And you're right. Answer is no. Why? Why is it no? Because what? You can write it in the chat. Because what? Excellent, guys. Excellent. Wonderful people. Because they are what? Same as example here on the pest control case, the Copeland versus Admiral Pest Control? Begins with an I. That's true, no intent, but begins with an I. The exact word is, the guests were what? Incidental beneficiaries. Coffee shop would be a what? Yes, that's correct. Would be an incidental beneficiary. That's correct, right? Right? Would be correct. An incidental beneficiary. Okay, wonderful people, let's go to page 323. Is it necessary to identify the third-party beneficiary? Is it necessary? Yes or no? Let's go to the chat. Is it necessary to identify the third-party beneficiary? Let's go to the chat. Yes or no? Talk to me. Somebody talk to me. Come on. Give me a yes or a no. Do you have to identify the third-party beneficiary? In the chat, please. In the chat. Yes or no? As I take attendance, as I always do too, you know. Let me see. And the answer is what, Sean? You can go out loud, say out loud, please. The answer is what?
Hey, it is not necessary.
No, right.
Party.
Yes, it's not necessary, right? My next question now, yes or no, my wonderful people. Can you identify that third-party beneficiary by class? What's the answer? Yes or no? Go to the chat, please. Can you identify that third-party beneficiary based upon what? Classification. Classification. Yes or no, my wonderful people? And those of you who are absent on Tuesday, make sure you keep up to date with your absentee sheet. There was assignment due yesterday before 11:59 to do your grade summary sheet. Okay, so you need to get that done, but also keep a record of absences, and we'll go over that later on. I didn't ask for the absentee sheet yet, but that's something that's going to be happening soon. And the answer is what, my wonderful people? The answer is yes. Yes, right? It's not necessary that the intended third-party beneficiary be identified by name. The beneficiary may be identified by class, with the result that any member of that class is a what? A third-party beneficiary. And they give us an example about the racetrack, right? A contract between the promoter of an automobile stock car race and the owner of a racetrack contains a promise by the owner to pay specified sums of money to each driver racing a car in certain races. A person driving in one of the designated races is a third-party beneficiary and can sue the owner on the contract for the promised compensation. Next question. Can a person modify or terminate a third-party beneficiary contract? Give me a yes or no. Again, this is a review. We talked about it the other day. Can they? Yes or no, my wonderful people? Can they? And what's the answer, Katie? Yes or no? You out there, Katie? Yes. Yes or no? And the answer is yes. Very good. You're on the phone, right, Katie? That's okay. I'm taking attendance too. I figured it was you, so. And the answer is yes. Remember what happened with Roy? What happened with Roy, Grayson? What happened with Roy? Huh? What did he do? Well, let me read it. Can the parties to the contract modify or terminate it so as to destroy the right of the what? Intended third-party beneficiary? The answer is yeah. If the contract contains an express provision allowing a change of beneficiary or cancellation of the contract without the consent of the intended third-party beneficiary, the parties to the contract may destroy the rights of the intended beneficiary by acting in accordance with the contract provisions. That's to be in the provisions of the contract. What happened with Roy? Roy obtained a life insurance policy from Phoenix Insurance Company that provided the beneficiary could be changed by the insured. What? Roy named his son, Harry, as the beneficiary. Later, Roy had a falling out with Harry and removed him as beneficiary. Roy could do this because what? The right to change the beneficiary was expressly reserved by the contract that created the status of intended third-party beneficiary. In addition, the rights of intended third-party beneficiary are destroyed if the contract is discharged or ended by operation of law, for example, through bankruptcy proceedings. So, what do we learn from this example about Roy? I have it in my margins of my text. Don't get into a fight with your parents, right? Don't get into a fight with your parents. All right, next question. Does a third-party beneficiary have greater rights than the contract? Let's go to the chat. Yes or no? I want people. Yes or no? Talk to me. Yes or no? Does a third-party beneficiary have greater rights than the contract itself? Yes or no? Let's go to the chat. Everybody, answer, please. So the question is, yeah, very good. Okay, I got a couple answers out there. The answer then is, although the intended third-party beneficiary rule gives the third party the right to enforce the contract, it obviously gives no more rights than the contract provides. So the third party only has the rights that are what? In the contract itself, right? That is, the intended third party beneficiary must take the contract as it is, right? If there is a time limitation or any other restriction in the contract, the intended beneficiary cannot ignore it, but is bound by it. So the third party intended beneficiary is bound by the contract, what it says, okay? If the contract is not binding for any reason, that defense may be raised against the intended third party beneficiary suing on the contract. My next question. What is an incidental beneficiary? I'll open it up. Anybody? What is an incidental beneficiary? Talked about it already, but that's 17-1D, page 323 at the bottom. Any of my wonderful people. What is an incidental beneficiary? What's the example I just gave you about that? What's the example? Oh, Stop and Shop, right? And ShopRite? 17-1D. Not everyone who benefits from the performance of a contract between other persons is entitled to sue as a third-party beneficiary. If the benefit was intended, the third person is an intended beneficiary with the rights described in the preceding section. If the benefit was not intended, the third person is a what? An incidental beneficiary. So they talked about the real estate developer from Ocean Atlantic Group Corp. Purchased a series of bonds from American Southern Insurance Company for the purpose of guaranteeing the performance of public improvement in a subdivision it was developing in Yorkville, Illinois. The bonds representing the surety contract between Ocean Atlantic and American Southern were issued in favor of the city of Yorkville. Ocean Atlantic hired subcontractor Aurora Blacktop Incorporated to perform several improvements, but the project stalled and Aurora was never paid for its work. Aurora lacks standing as a third-party beneficiary to enforce the subdivision bonds against American Southern because the contractual obligations ran only to the city. Aurora was deemed an incidental beneficiary rather than a third-party beneficiary. Okay. Here I have at the top of my page here, how do you determine if a person is an intended or incidental beneficiary? Whether or not a third party is an intended or incidental beneficiary, therefore comes down to determining whether or not a reasonable person would believe that the promisee intended to confer on the beneficiary an enforceable benefit under the contract in question. And I have the example there in my textbook of Stop and Shop, right, that we talked about. The intent must be what? The intent must be what? Let's go to the chat. Must be what? Must be what? Take a look at the chat here. I see you all writing down.